The boy's voice came thin as frost in the trees. "Sir, can we rest here tonight?" It was not a demand and not a plea loud enough to stir pride. It was the sound of a long road ending in a breath that had nothing left to give. The hunter had been counting his steps to keep the cold from biting too deep, and that voice broke the count clean in two. He stopped where the pines thinned and the ground dipped toward a stream that breathed white in the dark. His hand stayed on the rifle out of habit, not threat. He did not turn it once. He listened. The woods had a way of lying when you rushed them. When he faced the sound, the firelight found him before the moon did. It showed the lines of a man carved by seasons that did not ask permission. His name was Flint Crowell, and he wore it like the scar on his cheek, earned and kept. He had learned early that names traveled faster than men, so he stayed light on both. He lived by meat taken clean, by tracks read true, by nights spent where the wind could not surprise him. He did not live by company. Company asked questions. 3 shapes stood beyond the fire's reach. They were small for the distance they had walked and older than they should have been for the weight they carried. The boy who spoke was called Ash Wilder, his hair the color of old straw, and his eyes steady in a way that came from watching over others. Beside him were 2 more. One was Rowan Pike, thin and sharp. With a cough he tried to swallow before it made sound. The other was Bear Holt, broad in the shoulders for his years, clutching a sack that had once held flour and now held hope, or whatever passed for it when hope ran out. Flint read them as he read sign. No iron smell. No fear sweat of a trap laid wrong. Hunger? Yes. And a hard march. The world had been scraping children off its edges since before he was born, but it still gave him pause. He had seen what roads did to the young when roads were all they had. He had seen worse when they had nothing at all. "You can sit," Flint said, keeping his voice low, like you spoke to a horse you did not own yet. "Not close. Wind's wrong." They obeyed without question, which told him more than their rags ever could. Ash eased down first, then helped Rowan with a gentleness that did not belong to a child unless it had been practiced. Bear set the sack down and did not let go, as if it might run. The fire crackled and lifted sparks that died before they learned to fly. They did not ask his name. They did not ask for food. They warmed their hands and watched the trees as if the trees might walk. Flint turned a strip of meat on a stick and let the fat hiss once before pulling it back. He had learned the cost of mercy and the cost of refusing it. Both came due at night. "Where are you bound?" he asked, not because he cared where, but because the answer would show him how far. Ash swallowed. "West," he said. "Anywhere the ground don't spit us back?" Flint nodded. He had walked west when east had closed its doors. He had walked north when south burned. Directions were promises that broke as easy as bones. He broke the meat in 3 and tossed the pieces short. Bear caught his and nodded like a man paid a wage. Rowan took a bite and coughed it back, then tried again slower. Ash waited until the others ate before touching his own. The night pressed in. Owls asked questions from the dark. The stream spoke its small truth. Flint fed the fire and kept his eyes open. He saw the way Ash kept count of the shadows, the way Bear flinched at a snap that was only a cone falling, the way Rowan's breath rattled like a tin cup in a pocket. "You got folks," Flint said. Ash shook his head once. "Had," he said, and the word was heavy enough to end the talk. Flint leaned back and felt the ache in his knees that told him rain was coming, or worse. He had planned to cross the ridge before dawn, to put miles between him and the town that paid too little and asked too much. Children were miles of their own kind. They stayed with you whether you walked or not. Sleep came in pieces. Flint woke to the sound of feet where there should be none. His hand found the rifle before his eyes found the shape. It was Ash, standing guard with a stick that had once been a fence rail. The boy did not jump when Flint moved. He did not smile either. "You don't have to," Flint said. Ash nodded. "I know." That was the moment that cut deeper than the cold. Flint had known men twice his age who did not know that morning came pale and mean. Frost silvered the ground. Rowan's cough had worsened, each breath a climb. Flint knelt and pressed 2 fingers to the boy's neck, then to his wrist. Fever. The kind that stole time. He reached into his pack and found the last of a bark he carried for such things. He did not say where he got it or what it cost. He brewed it and watched Rowan drink. Slow and brave, Bear asked. You hunt alone? Mostly, Flint said. Why? Bear asked. Not rude. Curious in the way the young were when they still believed answers might fit in a hand. Quieter, Flint said. It was true enough. They broke camp with the care of people who had been chased by their own mistakes. The trail up the ridge was narrow, a cut between rocks that remembered older winters. Flint took point. Ash walked close, eyes learning, feet copying. The land opened on the far side to a sweep of timber and a valley that held smoke where it should not have. Flint halted. Smoke meant men. Men meant rules. Rules were never written for boys with no names left to lose. They watched a wagon crawl along the low road, guarded by riders with coats too fine for honest work. Flint felt the old math rise in him. He could turn away. He could teach them to snare rabbits and find water that did not kill you. He could give them a start and vanish like he always did. Or he could do something that would not let him vanish again. Ash stood at his shoulder. Sir, he said, careful again. We won't slow you. Flint looked down at the three of them and saw not a burden, but a fork in the trail that did not mark itself. He thought of the nights he had chosen the easy silence over the loud right thing. He thought of the way the world bent around choices made once and kept. He lifted his hand, not to hush them, but to point. See that smoke, he said. That road feeds a place that eats boys. We don't take that road. Bear frowned. Then where? Flint breathed in and let it out. The valley waited. The ridge behind them did not care. He felt the future lean in, listening, the way the woods did when you made up your mind. We go north, he said. There's a line of water and a cabin that still stands if the snow didn't take it. From there, we decide. Ash nodded, relief and fear crossing his face like weather. Rowan coughed once, softer now. Bear tightened his grip on the sack. They stepped off the trail together. The sound of their boots changed, as if the ground itself had noticed. Flint did not know yet what it would cost him. He only knew that in one breath the hunter had chosen, and the choice had already begun to choose back. They cut north through timber that thinned and thickened like a breathing thing. Flint set a pace that did not ask too much and did not give mercy to mistakes. He taught with his feet first, then his hands. Step where the moss stays dark. Do not break a branch unless you mean to leave a mark. Listen longer than you look. Ash learned quick, his eyes moving before his head. Bear learned by doing and doing again, strong enough to carry Rowan when the coughing stole his legs. Rowan tried to hide the shakes that came with the fever, pride bracing him upright until the ground leaned and Flint caught him by the elbow. They stopped at noon near water that ran clean over stone. Flint knelt and tested it, then waved them in. He watched as they drank, not like travelers who trust a map, but like people who had learned thirst could lie. When Rowan finished, Flint pressed the bark brew into his hands again and waited until it was gone. The boy met his gaze and nodded once. It was not thanks. It was a promise to keep breathing. As the day wore on, the land told its older stories. Burned scars cut through the forest where fire had moved like a hungry thing and left bones of trees pointing skyward. Old fence posts leaned into nothing, wire singing faint when the wind worried it. Flint's jaw set at the signs. He had trapped in these hills when he was younger, before the roads crept closer and men followed them like ants to sugar. He had learned to read the way settlements rose and fell, how work dried up and left a vacuum that cruelty filled. Ash walked close enough to hear him breathe. After a while, he asked, "Why do you know this place?" Flint did not answer at once. He waited until they crested a low rise, and the valley opened again. Wider now, smoke smudging the far edge. "I was born near here," he said. It was not a lie. It was not the whole thing. They made camp before dusk, tucked under a stand of fir that blocked the wind. Flint set snares with Ash, watching, careful not to teach too much at once. Bear gathered deadfall and stacked it neat. Rowan slept, breath easier, the fever breaking just enough to lie about leaving. Flint cooked. Thin stew from roots and the last of his meat. It tasted of iron and pine. It filled the belly and kept the night out. After dark, the woods did not quiet. They rarely did when men were near. Flint took first watch and let the boys sleep in a row, boots touching. He thought of the wagon and the riders, with their clean coats. He thought of the way smoke had clung to the valley like it meant to stay. There were places where children went missing, and the land shrugged. There were places where men said they were saving souls and kept ledgers instead. Flint had crossed such places and learned to keep his head down. A sound came soft from the south, then another, not animal. Metal kissed metal, faint but real. Flint shifted the rifle and eased to the edge of camp. He did not see the men, but he knew the sound of a bridle chain being adjusted, the cough swallowed in a sleeve. He waited until the noise passed, until the woods took it back. When he returned, Ash's eyes were open. "They close," Ash whispered. "Close enough," Flint said. "Sleep." Morning brought a sky the color of tin. They broke camp fast. The north path narrowed into a deer trail that Flint knew would cross a stream that bent around rock like a question mark. Past it, the cabin might still stand. If it did not, there were other choices, all worse. As they moved, Bear told his piece in fits. He spoke of a town that took children in after a bad winter and put them to work sorting scrap and hauling water. He spoke of a man called Ledger Holt, no kin, who kept books and counted hours and took more than he gave. He spoke of nights locked in and days let out, of wagons that came and left lighter than they arrived. Ash listened and filled in what Bear did not say. Rowan stared at the ground and nodded at the right places. Flint said little. He did not ask for names he would not use. He did not promise safety. He watched the trail and the sky and felt the pressure build. Like the world leaning its weight on a thin door, they reached the stream by noon. It ran higher than Flint liked, snowmelt making it quick and cold. He crossed first, found footing, then turned to take Rowan. Bear went last, steady as a post. On the far bank, Flint paused. Tracks fresh enough to shine. Horses, 3, shod. He followed them with his eyes until they vanished into brush. North, but angling east. "They ahead," Ash said. "Yes," Flint said. They pushed on. The cabin came into view near dusk, or what remained of it. One wall had fallen, roof sagged, but the hearth stood, and the chimney had not yet lost its fight. Flint moved slow, circled, checked for sign. Nothing recent. They went in. Inside smelled of old smoke and mice. Flint cleared a space and set a fire. He fixed the door with a bar cut from the fallen wall. He showed Ash how to place a mirror shard at the window to catch light without showing flame. He showed Bear how to set a noise line with tin and string. Rowan sat by the fire and breathed. That night, Flint told a story without meaning to. He spoke of a winter when the river froze wrong and took men who thought they knew better. He spoke of choosing a line through white that did not break. Ash listened like a man taking measure. Bear asked questions. Rowan slept and did not cough. Near midnight, the noise line sang. Flint moved. He saw the shadow at the window and the second behind it. He did not fire. He waited. The men spoke low, words carried on breath and confidence. Cabin 1 said, "Smoke." They moved on, boots careful. Flint let them go. When the sound faded, he felt the choice tighten again. He could not outrun this forever. He would have to decide where to stand. At dawn, they ate and packed. Ash asked, "Who were they?" "Men who follow smoke," Flint said. "Will they come back?" Yes, Flint said. They left the cabin and took to higher ground, where the wind would scatter sign. The land rose and fell, offering views and taking them back. Flint showed Ash how to read the clouds for snow. He showed Bear how to set his feet to spare his knees. He told Rowan a joke dry as bone and watched him smile once quick. By afternoon, sound of wheels reached them, distant but steady. The wagon again, or another like it. Flint guided them into a cut where rock walls pinched close. They waited as the sound passed below, voices drifting up, a laugh too easy for the work. Flint felt the old anger wake. He tamped it down. Anger made noise. When the sound was gone, Ash said, "They hunting." "Ash," Flint said. "Not deer." They moved until dusk pressed hard. Flint found a hollow and set them in. He took watch and counted breaths. He thought of the ledger Bear had named, of books that made people into numbers. He thought of the way choices rippled. He thought of the line of water ahead that would take them into country he did not know as well. Ash came to sit beside him. "Sir," he said, then stopped. Flint waited. "If we slow you," Ash said, "you should leave." Flint looked at him. He saw the road in the boy's eyes, the miles already walked. He saw the future trying to speak. "We all slow each other," Flint said. "That's how you know you're not alone." The wind shifted. Somewhere below, a dog barked once, then twice. Flint's hand closed on the rifle. The hollow held its breath. The future leaned closer. And the night did not say which way it would break. The barking below did not carry the wild fear of a lost dog. It was sharp and trained, the kind that came when a handler wanted the woods to know he owned a piece of it. Flint kept his body still and let only his eyes move. Ash, Bear, and Rowan lay close, not sleeping now, only quiet. The hollow held their heat like a secret. But secrets had a way of slipping when the wind changed. Flint listened for hoofbeats, for the clink of tack, for the scrape of boots on stone. Nothing close yet, but the barking shifted left, then right, like men spreading out. He pressed 2 fingers to Ash's shoulder, then pointed to the ground, a simple sign to stay low. Ash nodded without a word. The boy had learned fast, too fast, like someone who did not have time to be slow. Minutes passed, heavy. The barking faded, then returned farther off, as if the hunters were testing the land, letting the dog taste the air and tell them where to press. Flint's mind worked the way it always did when trouble came. The north water line would be safer once they reached it. Getting there meant crossing open ground where tracks would speak loud. The hollow was cover. But cover turned into a trap if you waited until the net fell. He leaned close to Bear and whispered, "If I tap your boot, carry Rowan. If I tap your elbow, you run. No questions." Bear's face tightened. He nodded once. His strength was real, but the fear behind it was real too. Flint respected that. "Fear kept you awake," Ash whispered. "Barely sound. Why them men want us." Flint did not answer right away. He watched the trees as if they might answer for him. "Some men make money by taking what can't fight back," he said. "They call it work. They call it saving. It's neither." Ash swallowed hard. Rowan's eyes shone in the dark, fever replaced by something worse, the memory of being counted and weighed. Bear's hands curled, then steadied. The hunters did not come into the hollow that night. They circled, pushed the dog through brush, then moved on, maybe satisfied, maybe unsure. When the barking finally died, Flint did not relax. He had learned that quiet was sometimes only the pause before the next move at first light. Frost snapped under their boots as they climbed out. Flint chose a line that ran along rock, where prints did not hold. He made them stop twice to break branches behind them and drag pine boughs over soft ground. It was not perfect, but it was better than leaving a straight story for anyone to read. Rowan kept up until his breath hitched. Flint had Ash walk beside him, not holding him like a child, but steadying him like a partner. Bear stayed behind, eyes scanning, ready to lift Rowan if needed. The day stayed gray, clouds low and thick, promising snow or rain. Either could help, either could hurt. By midday, they reached a ridge that looked down into a spread of timber and a bend of water far below. Smoke rose there too, thin and distant. Not a campfire. Too steady. Too placed. Flint's stomach tightened. "That's a station," he said, more to himself than them. Ash squinted. "Station for what?" "For trade," Flint answered, did not like the taste of the word. They moved along the ridge until they found a notch between boulders that offered a view without giving one. From there, Flint saw a rough yard by the river, a few sheds, a corral, and a wagon turned sideways like a gate. Men moved in slow patterns, not hurried, because they believed no one could touch them. A dog trotted the edge of the yard. On a post near the corral hung a bell, and Flint knew that bell. He had heard its ring years ago when he still thought towns were honest if you worked hard enough, Bear whispered. That's where they took us. Rowan made a small sound, like a breath caught on barbed wire. Ash went very still. Flint watched the yard longer, mapping it with his eyes. 2 riders at the gate. 1 man at the corral. Another near the sheds. More inside, unseen. And on the porch of the largest shack, a man sat with a book on his knee, writing as if the world was only numbers. Ledger Holt. Flint had not seen him in years, but he did not forget a man who smiled while making other people smaller. Ledger's hair had thinned, his belly had grown, but his posture had the same calm of someone who believed he was protected by law, or the lack of it. Flint eased back from the view. We don't go near that place, he said. Bear's voice shook, anger and fear braided. Then how do we get past? We go wide, Flint said. We let the river carry our scent away. We keep high. Ash stared down toward the yard. If that man's there, he said, careful. Then them riders are here for us, yes, Flint said. And the word landed like a rock. They pushed north again, keeping the river on their left, but never close enough to be seen. The land got rough, brush thick, stones loose. It slowed them, and Flint could feel time tightening. Every hour they moved was an hour the hunters narrowed their search as they walked. Ash began to talk in small pieces, as if the words had been trapped in him and now needed out. He spoke of a woman called Mercy Vale, preacher's widow who had fed them once behind the church when Ledger's men were not watching. She had pressed a crust of bread into Ash's hand and whispered, "Run when the bell rings twice." She had kept her eyes lowered, afraid to be seen doing good. Ash said her house sat near the river bend, not far from the station. He said she might still be there, might still have a heart. Flint listened, measuring the risk. Help was a light in the dark, but light drew eyes. He had lived long enough to know that Bear spoke next, quieter. He told Flint about the ledger book Ledger carried, how the man wrote names on paper and made those names vanish by changing the ink. How a boy could be listed as hired out, then listed as gone, and no one would ask where. Bear said, he told us we owed for our food, owed for our bed, owed for breathing his air. Rowan's hands trembled as he walked. He said my cough was laziness, Rowan whispered. He said sickness was a choice. Ash looked back at Rowan with a fire in his eyes that did not belong to a child. Flint saw it and felt both pride and worry. That kind of fire kept you alive. But it could also make you stand up at the wrong time. The first snow came late afternoon, light and drifting. It softened the world, blurred edges, and for a brief stretch, Flint felt hope. Snow covered tracks. Snow hushed sound. Snow also slowed the week and made the night colder. He glanced at Rowan and saw the boy's lips turning pale again. They found an overhang of rock and settled under it. Flint started a small fire tucked deep, fed with dry needles and bits of wood that smoked little. He placed stones around it to hold heat. He had Ash gather more bark for Rowan's brew, and Bear set another noise line across the open side. They ate what little they had. Hunger became a dull, familiar ache. While the others settled, Flint slipped out alone, moving quiet through the snowfall. He needed to know where the hunters were, how close the net was. He circled wide, staying downwind, eyes scanning for sign. He found it near a stand of aspen. 3 sets of horse tracks, fresh snow, only just dusting them. Boot prints too, careful spaced, like men moving with purpose. He followed the trail until he saw the faint glow of a camp below, hidden in trees. He did not go closer. He did not need to. He heard a voice carry, a man laughing, saying, "Ledger wants his property back." Flint's jaw tightened. Property. That word could turn a human into a thing in one breath. He slid back to the overhang without being seen. Ash met him at the edge, already awake, already watching. Flint did not like how quick the boy had become at reading him. "They close," Ash said. "Yes," Flint answered. Bear stirred. hearing enough to know. "We fight," Bear said, voice low. Flint held up a hand. "We survive," he said. "There's a difference." Rowan coughed, sharp, then pressed his fist to his mouth, trying to swallow it down. Flint knelt beside him. "You keep that cough quiet," he murmured, not blaming, only urging. "If they hear you, they'll come." Rowan's eyes filled, not with tears, but with shame. "I'm trying," he whispered. Flint's voice softened. "I know." They sat in a tight circle as the snow thickened, and the wind began to move like something looking for cracks. Ash stared into the fire and said, "If we go wide, we end up in the mountains," as Flint said. "And if we go down," Ash said, nodding toward the river, "we pass near Mercy Vale." Flint's silence was the answer. The choice was there, sharp as a knife edge. Risk the station and a woman's kindness, or risk the mountains and a child's failing breath. Either way, Ledger's men were between them and a clean escape. From somewhere out in the snowy dark, a bell rang once, distant, faint, carried by the wind. Then, after a pause that made Flint's skin tighten, it rang again. Ash's head snapped up. His face went white. "That's the signal," he whispered. Twice. Flint stared into the dark where the sound had come from. A signal meant someone was trying to help, or someone was trying to lure. He felt the future lean in again, listening hard. Behind them, the hunters waited with their dog and their ropes of lawless words. Ahead of them, a bell spoke in the snow, and Flint had to decide if it was Mercy calling, or a trap wearing Mercy's coat. The bell's echo faded into the snowfall, leaving the night heavier than before. Flint did not move at once. He let the silence settle, the way a hunter let a startled animal forget it had been seen. Ash watched him, waiting. The boy's faith balanced on Flint's stillness. Bear shifted his weight, ready to lift Rowan again, if the order came. Rowan's breath rasped soft, each pull a thin wire drawn tight. That bell could be truth, Flint said at last, voice low. Or it could be bait, Ash nodded, jaw set. Mercy Vale rang it before. She said twice meant run. Ledger would know that, Flint said. The wind pushed snow sideways, erasing edges, offering cover and danger both. Flint pictured the map in his head, the river bend, the yard with its men and dog, the cabin behind them now empty and cold. He pictured Rowan's cough turning worse in the mountain air, the way Bear's strength would drain if the climb stretched long. He pictured Ash trying to be older than his years and paying for it. "We move," Flint said. "Not toward the sound. Not away from it. We cut between." He led them downslope, careful, choosing ground where brush broke their outline. Snow thickened, softening their steps. They moved slow and steady, counting breaths. Flint stopped twice to listen. Once he caught the faint jingle of tack far off, then nothing. Once the dog barked again, closer this time, then went quiet, as if someone had laid a hand on its muzzle. They reached a place where the land dipped and the river widened into dark water edged with ice. The bend Ash had spoken of lay ahead, hidden by trees. Smoke no longer showed, which meant fires banked or none at all. Flint felt the weight of eyes, imagined them on the ridge behind, on the yard below, on the river path ahead. He hated that feeling, the sense of being written into someone else's ledger. He signaled a halt and crouched. "If this goes wrong," he whispered, "you do what I say when I say it." No arguing. Bear nodded, mouth tight. Ash nodded, eyes bright. Rowan swallowed and nodded, small and brave. They edged closer to the bend. A shape moved near the water, a figure wrapped in a shawl, lantern hooded so the light stayed low. Flint raised a hand to stop the boys and stepped forward alone. Boots quiet on snow. "Mercy," he said, not loud. The figure froze, then lifted the hood enough to show a pale face lined by care and courage both. Mercy Vale's eyes flicked past Flint to the dark behind him, then back. "You brought them," she whispered. "I did," Flint said. "We don't stay." "I know," Mercy said. "They are already turning the yard upside down." Ledger's angry. He hates losing what he's counted. Flint's mouth said. Then the bell. I rang it, Mercy said. Once to test. Twice because I saw the riders split. One went high. Two stayed low. A low whistle sounded across the water, answered by another, farther off. Mercy flinched. Flint felt the moment tighten. They're closer than I like, Flint said. Mercy nodded. There's a skiff tied under the bank. It will take you across quiet if you mind the current. On the far side, there's a cut that leads to Old Orchard ground. From there, you can reach the North Trail without showing yourselves. Flint measured the water, the snow, the sound of whistles. And you. Mercy's smile was small and steady. I have my own way. Ash stepped forward then, unable to hold back. Thank you, he said, voice earnest. Mercy touched his cheek with cold fingers. Run straight, she whispered, and keep running. Flint waved Bear and Rowan in. They moved fast but quiet, Bear lifting Rowan into the skiff, Ash steadying the bow. Flint held the line and waited until Mercy slipped back into shadow. He did not look for her again. Looking back cost time. They pushed off. The skiff slid into the black water, ice ticking against wood. Flint took the oars and set them shallow, letting the current do the work. Snow fell thicker, blurring the far bank. Halfway across, the dog barked, loud and sharp now, close enough to raise hair. Down, Flint hissed. They crouched as a lantern flared on the near bank. A voice carried, Ledger's voice, smooth and sure. Mercy, he called. You ring bells and forget who owns them. Another lantern joined it. Then another. The dog strained, barking hard, pulling at its lead. The skiff drifted, slow as breath held. Rowan's cough rose in his chest like a wave. His hand flew to his mouth. Bear pressed him down, gentle but firm. Rowan shook, eyes wide. The cough broke free, a thin, sharp sound that cut the night. Over there, a man shouted. The dog lunged. Flint pulled on the oars, angling the skiff toward shadow. The current caught them and turned the bow. Ice scraped. A shot cracked the night, not close enough to strike, but close enough to mean intent. Flint felt anger spark, hot and dangerous. He shoved it down and worked the oars. They hit the far bank hard. Ash jumped out, hand sure, holding the skiff while Bear hauled Rowan free. Flint dragged the skiff under the bank and shoved brush over it. He did not look back. He led them into the cut Mercy had promised. A narrow crease in the land that swallowed them whole. Lantern light bobbed across the water behind them. Voices shouted. The dog barked until the sound stretched thin. Snow fell harder, muffling, hiding. The cut climbed and twisted. Flint kept them moving until lungs burned and legs shook. He stopped only when the ground leveled into Old Orchard rose. Trees gnarled and bare, their branches reaching like hands. They took cover among the trees. Flint listened, counted heartbeats. The pursuit faltered at the river. He heard confusion, the dog's bark breaking off, a curse. He did not relax. Ledger was not a man who gave up easily. Rowan sank against a trunk, breath ragged. Flint knelt and checked him, fingers sure. The fever had flared again, the cold biting deep. Flint pulled off his own coat and wrapped Rowan in it without a word. Bear stared, then looked away, swallowing. Ash crouched beside Flint. You didn't have to, he said, nodding at the coat. Flint met his gaze. I did. From the orchard, they could see a faint glow of priver where lanterns moved like restless fireflies. Ledger's voice carried again, sharper now, cutting through the snow. Spread out, he called. They can't go far. Flint's jaw tightened. He scanned the orchard, the fence line beyond, the rise that would lead to the North Trail. It was close enough to taste, far enough to cost them. The snow would hide them if they kept moving. It would also slow Rowan to a crawl. Bear shifted, hefting Rowan again. I can carry him, he said. All night if I have to. Flint nodded. You'll do more than carry, he said. You'll keep him breathing. Ash rose. Eyes on the fence line. I can run ahead, he offered. Draw them. No, Flint said. Firm. Not like that. A whistle sounded closer now, answered by another. Boots crunched on snow, the sound traveling fast in the cold. Flint motioned them to move. They slipped between the trees, using the rows to break their line, stepping where old roots held at the fence. Flint cut the wire low and eased them through. On the other side, the land rose, toward the trail. Wind swept and open. Lantern light flared behind them as a man reached the orchard and cursed. They climbed. Bear's breath came hard, but he did not slow. Ash stayed close to Flint, copying his steps. Rowan murmured something, a name or a memory. Flint could not tell. He leaned in and spoke low, steady, telling Rowan about the cabin that still stood farther north, about soup that steamed and a fire that did not go out. He did not promise. He described shots cracked again, farther off, meant to frighten. The dog barked, then fell silent, maybe pulled back, maybe confused by the snow and water and too many choices. The wind rose, pushing snow sideways, racing them as they went. They reached a stand of spruce that marked the edge of the North Trail. Flint stopped them there, heart hammering, ears straining. Lanterns bobbed below, searching, voices arguing. Ledger's voice cut through, tight with anger. "Find them," he said. "They're mine." Flint looked at the boys, at Bear's set jaw, at Ash's fierce calm, at Rowan's pale face wrapped in his coat. He felt the future press close, so near it hurt to breathe. "We're close," he whispered. "Closer than they think." Below, a lantern swung toward the spruce, light climbing the slope. The bell rang again by the river, once this time faint and far. Flint tightened his grip on the rifle, not to fire, but to steady himself. The trail ahead curved out of sight, white and waiting. The men below closed in, their light brightening the snow. Between them lay a handful of steps and a choice that would decide everything. And Flint took one breath, ready to make it count. Colin, the lantern light, climbed the slope and then stalled, as if the men below had felt the mountain watching them back. Flint did not move until the wind shifted again and pushed snow hard into their faces. He took that moment and stepped onto the North Trail, guiding the boys with a hand at their backs. Bear carried Rowan like a promise he would not drop. Ash walked last, eyes never leaving the glow behind them. They moved along the curve until the trail bent and the spruce thickened. The lantern light faded, swallowed by the trees and the storm. Voices drifted up, sharp with anger and doubt, then broke apart as the men argued which way to go. Flint led them off the trail at a narrow place and down, into a shallow draw where rock and roots made a ladder only he would trust. Snow covered their marks as fast as they made them. When they stopped, it was not because they were safe, but because Rowan could not take another step. Flint set him down on a bed of needles and pressed his ear to the boy's chest. The breath was shallow, but there. Flint built a fire with hands that did not shake, coaxing flame from damp wood the way he always did, patient and sure. He fed Rowan warm broth from the last of their stores and wrapped him tighter. Ash sat close and talked, not loud, not much, telling Rowan about the cabin Flint had promised and the soup and the fire. Bear kept watch, broad shoulders blocking the wind. The storm worked in their favor through the night. Snow piled deep and clean, erasing sound, erasing story. By morning, the world had changed its face. Flint tested the sky and nodded. "We move at first light," he said. "They won't find us now." They followed the north water line all day, keeping to cover. Flint found the cabin by mid-afternoon, standing stubborn against the cold as if it had decided to stay no matter what men did. The roof held. The hearth drew. Flint smiled once, quick and private. He set the boys to work. Ash gathering kindling, Bear hauling water, Rowan resting by the fire. When the soup steamed and the cabin warmed, Rowan's color returned in small steps. Like dawn, that night, Flint left before the others slept. He crossed back toward the river, moving light and quiet. He did not go to fight. He went to finish his story the right way. He found Mercy Vale's house dark and whole. A lamp glowed inside. Mercy opened the door before he knocked, eyes sharp. "You got them through," she said. "Yes," Flint said. She nodded, relief breaking across her face. Ledger's men searched until morning. The storm took their nerve. The dog lost the trail. Ledger's angry. Ledger's done, Flint said. Mercy looked at him, measuring. How? Not with a gun, Flint said. With light? At dawn, Flint returned to the cabin with a plan. He sent Ash and Bear to cut a signal trail toward the high pass, obvious enough to draw eyes. He stayed with Rowan and waited until the sun climbed just enough to touch the valley. Then he walked down to the river in plain sight and crossed where the water ran low and clear. Ledger Holt sat on the porch with his book, calm as ever, writing numbers that did not belong to him. Flint walked into the yard and stopped where all could see him. Men reached for weapons and stopped when Ledger lifted a hand. I wondered when you'd show, Ledger said, smiling thin. You always did like to play hero. Flint did not answer. He held out a folded paper. Mercy had pressed it into his hand at dawn. Ledger frowned and took it. His smile fell as he read. What is this? Ledger snapped. Records, Flint said. Names you changed. Hours you stole. Accounts you kept quiet. Ledger laughed, sharp. Paper, he said, means nothing. Flint raised his voice then, just enough. Sheriff Boone will be here by nightfall, he said, along with a preacher and a judge who still remembers what the law looks like. They've read the same paper. So have the men who work your wagons. They're tired of being counted wrong. A murmur moved through the yard. Ledger's eyes flicked to his men, saw doubt where there had been obedience. Mercy stepped from the shadows at the gate, not afraid now, holding a bell rope in her hand. She rang at once, clear and strong. Men from the road stopped and looked. The sound carried. Ledger's face hardened. You think this ends me, he said. It ends this, Flint said. Ledger lunged, hand flashing. But the men around him did not move to help. One took his arm and held it. Another stepped back. The book fell to the dirt and lay open, its lies staring up at the sky. Flint turned and walked away. He did not wait for thanks. He did not need to see the end to know it had begun. By the time he reached the cabin again, the boys were waiting. Ash ran to him and stopped short, remembering himself. Bear grinned wide. Rowan slept by the fire, breath easy and deep. They stayed there through the worst of winter. Flint trapped and taught. Ash learned to read the land and the weather. Bear learned patience to match his strength. Rowan healed, slow but steady, laughter returning in pieces until it came easy again. When spring broke the snow, Flint took them to a place farther north, where the river ran wide and the ground welcomed seed. They built a house that stood straight and true. Mercy visited when she could, bringing news and bread and a smile that had lost its fear. Ledger's station closed. The yard grew quiet. The bell was taken down and set aside. Flint thought often about the moment in the hollow when the future leaned in. He thought about the breath he took and the choice he made. He had lived alone for a long time, believing quiet was the same as peace. He learned different. One evening, as the sun set gold over the water, Ash asked, "Will they come for us again?" Flint looked at the house, the land, the boys, who were not boys anymore. "No," he said. "Some roads don't lead back," Bear asked. "What about you?" Flint smiled, slow and real. "I'm home," he said. Rowan laughed and threw a stone into the river, watching the rings spread and fade. The water kept moving, carrying the day away. Flint stood with them and felt the weight lift, not because the world had changed, but because he had met it head on and chosen to stay.